Okay. All right, well, we'll call the meeting to order. And we'll, the roll call is pretty simple, but let's see here. I don't have all the meeting. Oh, how about we'll just all state our name as we, for the, I guess, because you're recording this, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, so go ahead and we'll start down there. Oh, yeah, just state name, say here, so everybody knows who's who.
William Bishop here. Sheila Stock-Smith here.
Yeah, Mark Vance here.
Michael Hurwitz here.
Okay. All right, very good. We will do the minutes. Well, you've got those out for recording. I don't know if anybody had a chance to review those, but at this point, since we can't approve anything anyway, we'll do that later. Okay. Let's move on to WRS Legacy LLC.
Yes. Have Dan Dungan here representing Springfield Electric and the WRLC Legacy LLC, which is actually the parent company. So I'll allow Dan to present and kind of clarify things.
Okay. Thank you. Again, my name is Dan Dungan, and I am the retired chairman of Springfield Electric. I also represent the property owner of Springfield Electric, which is, generally speaking, 700 North 9th Street. That LLC is called WRS Legacy. And some people have asked me, what does that stand for? WRS stands for William Robert Schneering, the founder of Springfield Electric, not William Richard, which was my father-in-law, but Robert. This goes back to the turn of the last century. So anyway, that's an LLC that was set up many years ago, and it owns the property, generally speaking, 700 North 9th Street, a little bit of 600 North 9th, and a little bit of 800 North 9th Street. So the property we're talking about is what we know as Springfield Electric Supply. And what we're asking for is TIF support for a project that will amount to about $5 million in investment. WRS Legacy will invest $3.5 million, and we're asking for TIF support for $1.5 million. And what we're going to do is construct, generally speaking, a 21,000 square foot distribution center on the south side of the campus there, which is on 700 North 9th Street. We also will be improving Miller Street and Enos Street, which are both Miller to the south and Enos to the north. And we own properties on both sides of those streets. As you know, the railroad relocation, the 10th Street corridor, is coming along that way, which is why we are working on this project, because part of our property is in the eminent domain field. And we're being asked to dismantle, tear down part of our property, and then rebuild. So that is the request is for the TIF. What we want to do is stay on North 9th Street and construct a building that will be an addition to the city, plus improve the streets along that whole corridor right through where we are today. So many of you have been through that area. You know what we've got there. It's a nice campus. Our corporate headquarters main building does stay, but about a third of the distribution center, which is behind that, which is largely most of the property, is being taken by eminent domain. So we're going to construct to the south. So that's the TIF request. We're looking for $1.5 million.
All right, excellent. I guess we'll open it up to questions, comments, et cetera, from the committee members.
I just have a question. You said that that you're going to be improving Miller and Enos streets. Is that part of the 3.5?
Well, the whole project is $5 million, Sheila.
But it's part of that. I mean, it's like not the city isn't putting in additional funding for that.
No, they're
right?
not doing anything like that. We've been asked to, and what we've done over the years is buy the projects, and when the city asked for additional green space, we've always been very green. And you'll see that what we have today will actually add more green space to the area, improve all the curbs and that type of thing in the area because of the way our trucks are going to come out. We've worked with IDOT, and they've granted us some access to 9th Street that we didn't have, another curb cut, which was a big process to get that accomplished. But we're paying for that, not IDOT. So we will have a better egress, ingress for trucks. And we get roughly, on a heavy day, 30 to 40, 53-foot trucks through there, 18-wheelers in and out. We have our own fleet of trucks, 7 or 8 distribution trucks that run roughly 18 hours a day. We run 2 shifts there, a night shift as well. And we're running trucks in and out there at night to other points in the downstate area. So it's an active center. And we needed the way this compound's going to be configured with the new distribution center to the south. We want to be able to access more of across Miller Street into that lot that's there today, which we don't use today. I put together a construction pro forma of our investment in the TIF request, which shows the cost and the build, that type of thing. So if I could make a distribution of these.
Sure.
Give you a general idea of the scope of the project.
Thank you.
Here's a handful
Thanks,
for
Dan.
you,
Yeah.
for the mayor. There you go, Michael. I'll give you a couple more.
Yeah,
there.
thank you. Thanks, Dan.
So what you'll see on this construction pro forma is basically a cash flow, how this is going to work. We're going to make, the whole project is a $5 million project, and we're going to invest $2.5 million this year, $1 million next year for 3.5. We're asking for TIF support, if possible, over a 3-year period. We're going to have to borrow some money because of the interim financing way this is going to work. And then you can see what our costs are with the GC, the HVAC, where all the money is going to build this particular thing, and how it flows out over the next 3 years. The bulk of the construction will happen once we get TIF approval. Bulk of the construction will start this fall. We've have a tentative hold on a building that's been ordered. We put money down on it. It'll be delivered probably in September. It's been the biggest issue was finding steel and all the material to make that happen. And we've went ahead and made that commitment to do that through the general contractor. So we hope to start maybe within 60 days. We've been working through the city, building permit, zoning and all that, and we've cleared all those hurdles, but we haven't turned the spade yet.
Ravi, so I know from just a preliminary discussion that we were trying to figure out, would this truly be TIF, or is there some other pools of money within the city? Have we figured that out yet?
Yeah, so we did figure that out, and the way that we would structure this is that this would basically be what WRS and Springfield Electric, what they put in is what they would get out. So what I mean by that is that we would be using TIF funds not to exceed $1.5 million. Additionally, to that, or subtracting from that $1.5 million is $241,000, which is the building materials exemption certificate that Springfield Electric has applied for and will receive.
Sorry to interrupt. Can you put the microphone to your face, please?
Yeah,
Thank you.
sorry, is this better? So, Springfield Electric, WRS, has applied for the BMEC, or Building Materials Exemption Certificate, and they would roughly receive 9.75% sales tax exemption on their building materials. So we're incorporating that incentive into the total package. So that incentive comes out to be about $241,000. So the remaining amount would be spread across the lifespan of the TIF in order for Springfield Electric and WRS to recapture or be reimbursed the property tax that they would pay annually over the course of that year.
And then where does that leave our Enos Park TIF then?
Good question, Mark. So we thought about this in great detail, and we did not. What this structuring of incentives allows us to do is not tap one dime into the Enos Park TIF. So this would entirely be generated based off of the development itself.
Oh, so, okay, so we're saying, well, it'll be almost a rebate of their own real
Exactly.
estate tax.
That's exactly the way to put it.
Okay.
It's a rebate or a pledge back of their property taxes,
Okay,
in addition to that BMEC, which I spoke of.
okay. Okay,
So this does not pressure in any way Enos Park. And we did the valuations on the property assessment, and what it would assess at, as long as the development happens as it should.
So mechanically, because I'm a novice at this, we would still remit our property taxes to the county, and then the county would, however that mechanism worked, and then there would be a flow of funds back to WRS, is what you're saying.
Correct. It would be on the city's portion. That's correct.
Okay.
And in the life expectancy, you said, our property taxes aren't 1.5 million a year. You're talking 10 years probably to make that happen. So will you advance that money in the front end so we can do this project?
So that's the thing that we're looking at in terms of the actual structuring of that remittance, Mr. Dungan. We haven't gotten clarity in regards to that, how that would be structured. But it is feasible in terms of using TIF without tapping into the Enos Park TIF, along with making the project fundable. The timetable on those funding appropriations, would be, I guess, the missing piece here. But one can think that annually, over the course of the life of that TIF, that's generally how we would structure the reimbursing payments.
So, Robbie, for this body, you're approving the project itself, right?
We are, and I guess we do need a little bit of clarity as to whether it is truly Enos Park TIF or, because this sounds, again, I'm a little bit ignorant on this issue.
No, you're fine.
But is this truly TIF or is this a different terminology of a rebate? And so that's where
It is TIF. So there's various mechanisms by way TIF payments can be paid out. One is a pay-as-you-go payment. One is typically what the city policy has been, is a third. We'd pay at the beginning, the middle, and the end. Or if we structure it based off of this kind of structure, which is whatever the property tax is going to be generated by the development, that would be in turn reimbursed back. So there's various ways, if that helps, Mark, of how TIF can be.
And I think if I'm in Dan's shoes, and I think this is maybe what you're asking, is that his intention would be that he receives this TIF funding, in some capacity, it looks like in 2022, 2023, and 2024, if I look at your
Correct,
sheet.
for adequate cash flow, right?
And so is that what we're saying, they would be able to be funded that?
Yeah, that's the part that we would have to take a look at and see exactly if, it's feasible to front fund, what they would collect off of their increment. Because currently that's the way it's intended to be structured, is that this is an annual reimbursement where we wouldn't necessarily be able to, front end or hash it out in 3 payments in that way or over the course of 3 years.
Okay.
So,
I'm guessing that might be important to
yeah.
you.
It's real important.
That's probably literally
This-
the million dollar question.
So why is, that needs to be figured out.
Yeah, otherwise I wouldn't waste my time being here if you're not going, I have to wait 10 years to be paid. It's like, it doesn't make any sense.
So what you're saying, Ravi, is that it says that they generate about close to 65,000 in tax, but that would be over a much longer period of time.
Well, it'll be
If we're just talking
reappraised,
about reimbursing it
I
every
believe
year.
that, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but I believe from talking with the mayor once before that the intention was we were going to fund this in this time frame, but we were figuring out how.
Correct.
And so I think then, to our point, before we can make a vote, we probably need to have that how figured out.
Yeah, and again, we're kind of going back and forth because the issue here with this lies is that if we were to tap into Enos Park, we would not necessarily be in a position to fund this project. And in order for the project to move forward, we're thinking of ways for it to do without exhausting the Enos Park TIF.
Okay.
And the way feasibly to make it run is to use the property tax generated. Now, the question here becomes is that would there be, and I am not in a position to make this call, but Corporation Counsel or the mayor, may move in the direction that, hey, if we can restructure it so we can front load, that property tax increment in an agreement, and have that on year 1, year 2, year 3, then, we can structure it that way.
Okay. Well, I would say for our purposes today, let's make the assumption that this will fund according to this time frame. And then is there additional questions if that's the case? Because I think if it's different, then we've got a whole nother, you have a whole nother set of things too.
Yeah. But I wanted to make sure you had enough information today to make a decision from the data that I've given you and all the other supporting documents
Yeah.
that were given many
Yeah.
weeks ago.
But if I'm not mistaken, we generally don't pre-fund out of TIF. I mean, you've always said, oh, it's a reimbursement, that's how we do it. And so, again, if it's not coming from TIF, is this, the way this is structured with the rebate on the taxes, do we have any others that are done that way?
We do have Lumber Lane, which is a targeted TIF. It's a one parcel TIF, and it's structured similarly in that fashion that annually they collect a reimbursement on their property taxes, and that's how that has been incentivized.
What about TIFs that were provided to nonprofits?
Nonprofits can certainly apply for TIFs. I'd have to look historically on how we structured those, but I would be hard pressed to be opposed that, there aren't alternative ways of structuring, and I think that's what we need to look at.
Well, we clearly are not a nonprofit. We're a tax-paying company.
Yeah.
We employ just north of 70 people there, and we'll employ more over the next number of years once this is up and running. And so we're improving the whole Enos Park area. We are in the Enos Park TIF. We're an anchor on North 9th Street. As you know, from Carpenter Street to North Grand, it's been challenging along that corridor, and we've been an anchor in that for the last 40 years, and we'll continue to improve that area as we go forward. So I hope the body has a way to figure this out. We'd love to work with the city to get this accomplished. And I think in spirit and body, this is what TIFs are for businesses that employ people. We employ people from the neighborhoods around there, work at Springfield Electric. Love for them to stay there and work there with us. But as you guys know, this wasn't our only option on North 9th Street. So we made the commitment to do that. And the mayor in the city, and the mayor has been very supportive all along on this whole process. So he was the one that said, maybe you ought to look at TIF. This is a number of years ago. And so that's what we're doing today.
What kind of timeline are you looking at, Dan?
We would really like to break ground in the next 60 days, Sheila.
But if this were not to come together,
We're going to have to
within
borrow,
how many,
we're going to have to go borrow money to make it happen. Yeah.
it's your plan to still do it?
Well, I have to go back to the investors, to see what their plan is, but I represent them. Personally, I am not an investor in it. I represent them and Springfield Electric in this whole process. But I'd have to go back to the investors and find out what they want to do.
Well, and I agree with Dan, the Springfield Electric has been an important part of our community here in Springfield for, is it over 100 years?
Over 100 years.
Yeah, and an important part of the Enos Park area. And the other thing that's interesting, and when I first looked at this, I thought, well, they're not putting any money in it, but you are. You're getting a $3.5 million rebate or money for that property that is basically eminent domain. And as you said, you could have, frankly, a lot of businesses would have maybe just, I don't want to say pocketed that, but have maybe not reinvested it, and you are.
Mark, you're correct. We're turning around, put the 3.5 back into it, and what's not disclosed on there is another $500,000 to $750,000 that actually Springfield Electric's putting into the new distribution center for automation equipment, racking, shelving, all sorts of things that make that process work.
Yeah.
So it's an upgrade.
How much did you say, Dan?
I don't know the final numbers, between $500,000 and $750,000 to rack, put some automation equipment in there and that type of thing that we do for picking and packing and conveying and that kind of thing. But that's not in this, because that's not this is the WRS quest, not a Springfield Electric. Springfield Electric is the tenant. But I do know what their investment is.
Well, any additional questions? Again, let's assume that this money will be funded in these 3 years as opposed to over 10 or 15 years. With that structure, is there additional questions or comments? Okay, so then, Ravi, if between you and the mayor and city council could get to our group on just confirm so that our approval is actually, we know what we're approving, and of course you know what we've approved, and then the same city council is going to need to know that as well before
Let's go through the same drill with them.
Yeah,
Exactly.
yeah.
But Robbie, it'll come here first.
That's correct. It
Come
will.
here first,
Yeah,
and
it'll
it's
come
my
here
understanding you guys make a recommendation to the city council.
That's
Right.
Correct.
Right.
Correct.
Because if
But
you
it's
don't
not a
make,
binding thing. I mean,
correct, I
it's,
understand, yeah.
And we'll
But yeah,
make sure
that's
that
at least
special
the
meeting is had, Mark.
sequence is supposed to work that way.
Yeah.
Okay, any additional questions, or Dan, anything additional?
Thank you. Thank all of you for coming down here today.
Thank you,
right.
Dan,
Yeah,
for making
thank you.
time.
Thank you.
Absolutely. Okay.
Okay. Let's see, is this Planet Fitness here?
Yes, so I'm going to call,
Oh, okay. Or do we have something else I need to address before that, in the
I don't
interest of
think so.
time?
We can move through the presentations if you'd like, and then we can cover the two remaining items. I was hoping that Corporation Counsel would be here to speak on items A and D, but he hasn't arrived yet.
Okay.
But we can walk through those.
Well, if you want to move on to C first, and
Yeah.
then hope maybe that gives him time to,
Yeah.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
Oh, you
Your
just said
call has
2
been
minutes.
forwarded to an automatic.
okay. Okay, let's see, well, before we move into those other, I guess, old business, again, we're not going to do because the mayor's,
Table, yeah.
okay.
And then one bit of, if I could, this might be, I didn't put it as a separate agenda item, but just kind of was brainstorming with the mayor earlier this morning, and thought it might make sense for maybe this commission to have a separate committee. You know, that was one of the suggestions that the mayor had. You know, I know. Oh. Sorry, is that better? Yeah, so it was suggested that, you know, maybe we form, as our commission is going to be expanding here, you know, a committee of 2 to 3 members, you know, that we can vet the projects, you know, prior to, you know, coming before this body, and then, you know, ultimately moving through city council as well. So, you know, a kind of economic development committee, or, you know, however we want to phrase that, a TIF committee, if you will, or, you know,
Sure.
something of that nature that 2 or 3 commissioners could work together on.
And I heard the mayor talk about this. I guess one of the thoughts that I've got with that, and then kind of the why, would be, there, you know, certain levels of detail that maybe isn't practical to do in a big meeting, digging into some of those details, and then 2, maybe that committee would be incumbent upon them to, you know, things like, for example, that it'd be great when we come to this body that we have something that it's ready to be approved.
Right.
Or not. And, you know, this one would be one, you know, we had that, again, this is my opinion, doesn't mean it was the rest of the group's agreement, that we had the couple projects where we were asked to approve something before we really even knew what we were approving. And those are the situations where, at least in my opinion, I'd rather have a committee vetting all that out so that we don't waste everybody's time here and our presenters, so.
So I just think, in the interest of full disclosure, that we should let our fellow commissioners know that Mark and I and the mayor did in fact do a pre-vetting meeting for this Springfield Electric project and the next Planet Fitness project, which I thought worked great. I wasn't really clear on what we were doing when we were invited to do it, but thought it worked out great, and the mayor at the end of that meeting did, because I raised the issue, and I said, are we doing this pre-vetting for everyone, or are we just doing it for these guys, you know? So he said, no, you know, I think this is the way I'd like to move forward. And again, I mean, my concern is if we're gonna do it, you have to do it for everybody. You can't just pick and choose. And the other problem I think I have with it is when you have a small committee, it isn't a public session. So the meeting that we had was not public. So I think you better think through that, you know. I mean, I think you can do a pre-vetting committee meeting, but I think you should be prepared to have all the same questions coming up in the, you know, many of the same questions. What I thought was valuable about it was it gave the person, the requestor, some understanding of the kinds of questions that we would be asking. But I still think because those committee meetings would not be public, that you're going to ask, I will at least, ask those questions again in a public setting, in a public session. So I don't know that you're going to, but I think, again, I think for efficiency, and I do think it's a good idea, it just has to be for everybody.
Yes, no, I agree.
Yeah, I think that was the mayor's intention as well, moving forward, that we'll make it a standard practice, like you had mentioned, Sheila, that, you know, everybody really, all the projects moving forward should be afforded this opportunity, you know, by this particular body to vet those projects. And most importantly, to your point and to Mark's point as well, is, you know, it's really about providing that feedback, you know, so they kind of also gain some insight into what they should be preparing for as they come, you know, through this body, you know, and their project is vetted more formally. So I think it will help our commission, you know, grow. And like you said, Mark, you know, when projects do come, you know, before this body, it's approve or not approve, you know,
Right.
or, you know, the discussion is more progressive in that way.
And again, kind of rehashing something from a couple of meetings ago, but I just would prefer to, it's a little, I guess as the chair, it's a little embarrassing at times to have something that we can't find, you know, we don't have all the information, or we can't deliver what we need to deliver. And I think we need to be able to do that in this meeting.
I agree.
Okay.
Yeah, let me call. Hi, Dominic. How are you doing? This is Ravi from the city.
Hey, Ravi. Good. How are you?
Good. You're on speaker here at the city council, you know, in front of the commission right now. So if you want, you know, Dominic, want to see if you can introduce yourself as well as go over your project and what you intend to do.
Absolutely. Thanks, everybody, for your time today. My name is Dominic Pico. I'm CFO for Black Duck Partners. We're a Planet Fitness franchisee. I'm based up in Appleton, Wisconsin, and we have gyms mostly in Wisconsin, Illinois, but across the 8 states, and including the one in Springfield, Illinois. We've operated that one since it opened in 2013. We are currently looking at developing a second store in Springfield, and what is unique about this project is we would look to construct a building from the ground up. Typically, like the one in Springfield currently, we lease from a third-party landlord, and that's normally what we would do, but in a few cases, we have looked to build our own buildings and be the landlord ourselves. So that's what the project before us is in Springfield, and we've identified some land in the northeast corridor, right off of the Dirksen thoroughfare, next to Menard, and are looking to, we're under contract to purchase it, and looking to, you know, secure some of the TIF financing or TIF incentives that are available through the program. I've worked with Ravi here to kind of isolate some of what's available and applicable here, and you prepared some of the materials for you that I think you're all looking at, or you've had a chance to look at, hopefully. And I'm happy to answer any questions about the project and about kind of what we're looking to accomplish through this. And yeah, hopefully that was a good introduction for you all.
Okay, very good. Well, thank you. This is Mark Vance, by the way. Thank you. I'll open it up to any questions or comments on the project.
So, Robbie, the request is for 250?
That's correct. The request is for $250,000. The way we would structure this is that $100,000 would come out of the Northeast TIF, and then $150,000 would be generated through their own property tax increment. Again, the additional 150 will come from the property tax increment that would be rebated back to them.
And then I guess, and then timing on that one, is that, what's the timing on that rebate?
Yeah, so the Northeast TIF actually expires in 2026. So we have 4 years to shelve out that reimbursement.
And their annual taxes are expected to be $60,000. No, wait, is that right? Yeah, $60,000 per year.
Yes, approximately.
So basically 2.5 year repayment.
Yeah, and they probably won't have that full bill though during that time.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct.
Okay. If that TIF runs out before that time frame's over, I guess it would, since it's their own property tax, it could go past the expiration of the TIF. Is that correct?
Yeah, they would be able to still be able to reimburse their property tax back after the TIF expired.
Okay.
It's an ongoing project.
Okay. Okay, any additional questions? Okay, seeing none, you maybe explain to him that
Yeah.
we're not going to take a vote today?
Dominic, so we don't have a quorum today at the moment, but some of the other commissioners who hadn't heard this project presentation were able to listen to it, and we will be scheduling a special meeting to vote on this, and you won't have to be present at that meeting. It'll just be the commissioners, and we'll make that vote determination, at a later date here, but very shortly.
Okay, excellent.
And then,
Well, I appreciate everyone's time today and consideration.
great, thanks, Dominic, and we'll let you know what's coming.
All right, I appreciate it. Thanks, Robbie.
Thanks. Uh-huh, bye.
Okay. You want to move on to the ordinance, or
Yeah,
which
sure.
one you want to do first?
So we can circle back to new business A, the ordinance amending chapter 33. So, and I believe Corporation Counsel is here with us now, so any questions can be answered. I know a couple of the commissioners did have some questions in regards to what this ordinance is, what it pertains to, and how it affects this body. So I thought that we would add it to the agenda item, and we can all vet those questions, accordingly, and hear from Corporation Counsel the exact interpretation of this ordinance, so nobody is left confused.
I guess I'll start just from, I know one of the key issues that I think maybe three of us have had concerns, at least maybe all four, is point E on Exhibit A that says no member during his or her tenure or 1 year thereafter shall have any interest, direct or indirect, in any contract, subcontract, proposal, or the proceeds thereof, with respect to any project reviewed, looked over, explored, or discussed in any fashion by this commission. And I feel like if the way it's worded, I feel like I need to step down from the committee. And so I don't know if that is what the intent is. I could see where if I had a conflict, or I think, Bill, is it Bill, is that right?
Will, yeah.
I will, okay. You have one or could potentially have one as well. Then I could see maybe where we wouldn't be able to vote on that issue and should refrain from doing so, but I feel like the way it's worded, maybe I couldn't serve on the committee. So I guess I'd just like to understand that better.
Yeah, I think,
I'd like to add that I think the way it's worded, that the new taxing body representatives that are coming on wouldn't be able to serve either, or vote. So if you've got, if we've got 1, 2, 5, 7, 8 people who can't vote,
yeah,
then that seems problematic to me.
True.
it does.
I mean, Mr. Zirkle, can you?
Corporation Counsel, could you maybe address the correct interpretation of that?
I'm not sure if this is working or if we even need it.
Can you go in front, can you go up in front of us, Jim, so that we can see you? Do you mind? Thank you.
This is my usual seat anyway.
Perfect.
Familiar territory.
Yep. Just very briefly, we will take another look at this. This is really meant to be personal interest, not if it's, for example, it would not apply to a person who's a member of a taxing body because it's not a personal interest. And this language is actually what's in the actual TIF Act, but it's directed towards anyone, even a city council member or any person, doing something that they have a direct personal financial interest in. So we can take a look at that language to perhaps make that a little more clear, but it's kind of the standard and obvious. You wouldn't be wanting to take action on something that you had a direct personal financial interest in. So, but we will take a closer look, and it may well be that we'll need to just clarify that.
And I think, at least from my perspective, I think just clarifying the fact that it's a personal interest and then also that it might be applicable only to voting on that issue.
That is correct.
And then, but in your case.
It's no different than city council. City council members are not to vote on ordinances where they have a direct personal financial interest. So once in a while, it doesn't happen very often, but once in a while you'll see, for example, an alderman saying that I feel there's a conflict, therefore I'm not going to vote.
Sure.
And so there are some different examples of that in a generic way, like with an alderman who might have a liquor license who cannot vote on liquor licenses or gaming matters. And so, but like I said, we will definitely take a closer look. I can understand where the question is coming from. It's a totally legitimate question, but it was not intended to be more onerous than what's in place now, which is you should not be voting on anything you have a direct personal financial interest in. And that's essentially what's in the statute now. Also, it's what all elected and appointed officials should have, in their mind whenever they're taking some official action that might have a direct personal interest. Like you wouldn't be able to vote on for example, to change the zoning that might enhance the value. If you own that property, you have a direct personal financial interest in that property, as opposed to just a generic, yes, I understand it's going to increase the general value of the area in my ward or something. That's different. Obviously there's still an interest, but it's not a personal financial interest.
Sure. Okay. Yeah, I think at least from what I'm hearing, the keys are that word personal interest and then vote. Because otherwise, especially you would have a personal interest in some things, but if you just recluse yourself from the vote on those items, and then same with me, I may be financing something that you could argue whether it's me or the bank that has a personal interest, but if I just don't vote.
Yeah. And again, in the case of, let's just talk about that exact example you just gave. I would recommend that if you were working for a financial institution that was funding the deal, financing the deal, then you should, as a matter of propriety, not vote on that agreement, simply because it might, even though you might not have it's not profiting you individually, but it certainly could be argued that there's a clear business conflict, or at least a substantial appearance of a conflict, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But again, we'll take a closer look at this, and maybe we can come up with some better language that we could report back to you maybe at the special meeting if you are going to hold a special meeting.
William, did you have a
Happy to do-
thought?
Yeah,
Happy to do that.
that's what I was gonna ask, because like on the last one with Planet Fitness, I know we do a lot of work with O'Shea, so I could possibly be a subcontractor on there, so I would have to not vote
Sure.
on that one.
And again, that's pretty speculative, meaning the mere fact that you might potentially, not are, but potentially could be a subcontractor, I don't think rises to that level. Now, if you had a direct contract relationship to build it, that becomes a lot closer circumstance, because the argument, I think the argument or presentation would be that the city is funding part of the project.
Okay.
See what I'm saying? But the mere fact that you might do it, I don't think would rise to the level of a legal conflict. You might refrain as a matter of, like you just disclosed, that you might be a subcontractor, but I don't think that in and of itself establishes a legal conflict of interest. But you may decide to refrain just because of that, but you're doing the right thing. Remember, the whole purpose of conflict of interest, not to go into this too much, is for disclosure, so people can understand if there's a certain circumstance. There have been a couple of cases where a member of the council, for example, had interest in the property that was adjoining another thing, and then they've disclosed that.
Okay.
See what I mean? And in at least one instance I'm aware of, went ahead and just refrained from voting, but they actually said, oh, by the way, I have property in that area, meaning that someone could argue, well, if you vote for it, you're really benefiting yourself, even though there's not a direct pecuniary, interest.
Okay.
But again, Mr. Chairman, if you like,
Zirkle.
we can, we'll come up with some language to maybe clarify that, or we'll put together a memorandum to give guidance.
Okay, yeah.
Did this pass city council, didn't it?
Yes.
Just pass city council with this current language?
Yes.
So this is the law of the land right now, the way it is written.
And in some ways, I think it would be even before that, because you should not be voting on things where you have which is obvious. I mean, I would never think anybody would do that, but where you have a direct pecuniary interest, or maybe even the argument of an indirect, like, for example, maybe I would be a subcontractor. That might be argued to be an indirect
Right, but
interest.
it all seems to be open to a lot of interpretation. And so it seems like if this just said personal and added a couple of words in there, then we wouldn't be open to all this interpretation. And let me just add that in my years of watching city council, it's not unusual at all. And I think it's happening right now with one of our alder people who are abstaining from all votes just because they work in the entity, not even at a high-level position, but just work for a governmental entity that is involved in, whatever is being
And
put
I'm
forward. So
sure
they're
that-
abstaining now, and that's been done before.
That's a little different circumstance, because that's clearly not a financial issue. You understand, that's not a financial issue. That's really a conflict of office, where you might end up where you hold an appointed office that may deal with, for example, an intergovernmental agreement. It's not a financial matter to you individually. Do you understand? It's a conflict of office argument where you may deal with something, but again, it's very, that entire approach is very, that's erring on the side of presenting no possibility of a conflict or appearance of a conflict.
Okay, so, but just back to your example, with Mark's example, if Mark wasn't the president of the bank, but was the teller at the bank, that wouldn't apply then, really, right? I mean, or
The
would
more
it?
distant, the more distant you are, then the more unlikely there's any kind of even the appearance of a conflict.
Well, I do think we're going to need some guidance in
Yeah.
terms of interpreting that.
Yeah, no problem. And again, I think the
Because
intent of the, go
I'm
ahead, I'm sorry.
It just seems to me, the taxing bodies that are going to be coming onto this commission have a direct financial interest.
But the member doesn't. They don't have a personal financial interest. It
No,
says
not
no
a
member shall have an
personal
interest.
financial interest. So,
It says no member shall have an interest.
But they are
We're talking about
representing-
individual member.
but aren't they representing the taxing body? I mean, they're here as a representative of the taxing body, whereas, I'm a representative of the community. I don't know what
I think they would
buckets
argue-
we all fit in, but, they're representing the taxing body that's the whole point. That's why they want to be on here. I mean, so it is a direct interest, not financial directly to them personally.
I think you have to, again, we'll be happy to take a look at this, but it's really for the individual member. No member, it's not somebody they represent. It says no member shall have an interest. And what they're talking about is a direct financial interest in the transaction. And I think that, for example, with the public body representatives, they probably believe, at least they've said to us in the various meetings we've had, they believe they represent their constituents. So they're not there individually, they're there to represent their constituents and, or their interest, as a public entity. So they would not have the representative would not have a direct personal interest, in a transaction. But I think that, again, we'll be happy to come up with, try to make it clearer so it's maybe less.
Well, let me ask you, if the
Subject to
school
discussion.
district, for instance, if the school district were to come in front of this body with a proposal for, I don't know, if somehow they're looking at building a new elementary school in the old TIF, I don't even know, it's not even active anymore, but let's say that they came in front of the interest, then would you think that the school district representative on this body would recuse themselves?
I would, just because of the appearance of it, I think I would suggest that they don't do that. But not to be, the school district would be, it would be more likely to be like maybe the park district, where we're trying to do projects, for example, with the park district or things like that. But do I consider that a personal financial interest? Absolutely not. Do I consider it a potential conflict because they're representing a taxi body the city is dealing with? Maybe. And that goes back to that whole thing with, you mentioned one of the council members. It's not because there's a personal financial interest, it's the conflict of office. You're holding two offices and then trying to do something that affects the other office. So, but again, I'm happy to try to clarify it, and we'll make sure that we have something for you at your special meeting.
Okay, very good.
Happy to do it.
Yeah, okay. That sounds good. All right. Do you want to talk about the SHA
Yeah, just
TIF?
briefly, just through that agenda item on there, just indicating that the SHA TIF is up for extension this year. It does end in December of 2022, so we are looking to complete that extension of that TIF, which I'm sure the commissioners recall. We did expand the SHA TIF this past year, to include the Pillsbury Mill site along with numerous other mostly residential properties in that expanded boundary area. Now we will look to extend the life or the tenure of the TIF this coming year. So probably from this body, like it was the case with the Enos Park TIF extension, a letter of support, extending the SHA TIF would probably be what, as an action item for this particular body on this agenda item.
And I think just to try to help, the the taxing bodies and the city did agree on the extension. So it has been passed in the legislature, to extend it. So the next action that has to be taken is the city council has to adopt an ordinance extending the dates. And I would think the commission at some point would want to consider basically supporting the time extension in the same way you discussed, the expansion.
Okay.
And the mayor wants to, as soon as the legislative process is completed, it passed, it goes to the governor's office, they have, I believe, 60 days to sign it. And so as soon as that's done, I know he would like to have the ordinance go forward, to change the dates. So it doesn't change the boundary, only the date.
Okay.
So I'm a little confused. So for this particular one, you're saying that this already was approved by the legislature?
That for the extension of the SHA TIF, yes, passed last week.
Okay.
Which
And
is
we
a
got, and we
tremendous-
already got letters of support
From all the taxing bodies.
right.
Yes, and it was passed on the very last day of the session, I believe a week ago Friday.
So,
So the next step will be to go to city council after the governor signs the bill.
so we don't really have to do anything with this, right?
Well, I guess what theoretically, we would need to approve it to go, before it goes to city council then?
Yeah, in other words, I think the thought was that in the same way you made a recommendation on expanding, then I think the mayor, the city would certainly appreciate a recommendation consistent with you're presenting the ordinance, so that'll come forward and
Sure.
say we're recommending extending the time. And I think that's what's happened in the past, I believe. Like when we did Indians Park, I think the extension came here. And just to give an explanation for how, the plan going in the future, although you actually adopted, I think, part of that plan when the expansion took place, because it assumed the TIF would be extended, if you recall all that discussion about the projects and things.
Okay, additional questions or comments there? All right, let's see, again, we'll go back to, we'll get the tracking when the mayor is here next time. Yeah, I'm stealing one of Sheila's questions to me, but I'll just ask you as well. Actually, it may have been to both of us. What is our timing on the other commissioners joining us? And can you kind of help us understand where we're at with that?
Yeah, I believe, Corporation Council, I believe the additional taxing body members that they wish to be appointed were up for first reading last week. I believe that was the case. So 2 weeks from now, but I'd let Corporation Council kind of provide that confirmation.
Yes, the ordinances for the appointments for the taxing body representatives, all except Lincoln Land. So they're in process where they would be adopted tomorrow night, would be approved. Then the mayor has to appoint, I believe, weren't there 2 or 3, Ravi, additional ones?
Yes.
So he's looking for them right now.
At large, yes.
At-large members, that is correct.
Okay.
But they won't be approved tomorrow night.
That is correct,
Okay.
yes.
Okay, and I'll speak for Sheila and let her speak for herself, but I know we were talking that the importance of diversity, in all sorts, in those additional, 3 more?
Yeah, and the mayor has been very proactive in this, in the sense of that was part of the reason why we have those at-large members as well, is that if the various taxing bodies are going to be introducing their own member, then at least, this body has its own independent way of diversifying, the commission with our at-large members at least.
I know we're, go ahead, Sheila, I'll let you
So
speak.
just let me, on this one, I think that's great, Ravi, and I support that. But I guess my original comments were as I was encouraging the taxing bodies
Yeah, I know.
to present us with some diverse candidates, which I don't think, well, maybe hasn't, I'm not sure. But, I appreciate that the mayor is then trying to
Yes.
do that if we're not going to get that. But I think it's incumbent upon every institution in this city to do that and not just, fill in it with our at-large members then.
Yeah.
But
I-
if that's the way we have to do it, then that's the way we have to do it. But it's a
No,
little bit
it's a point well taken, Commissioner.
discouraging that that's how it has to be done, but.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's a point well taken, Commissioner, and in addition to the at-large, we do have one female at least, coming on, are the new appointees out of the new taxing body, so I know it's not where we want to be, but it's certainly, better than where we were.
Okay, very good. Ravi, anything else we need to cover that we haven't discussed?
I don't think so. I will be, once we figure out some of the questions that were posed here, then I'll look to schedule that special meeting with the commissioners. And of course, the presenters will not be at those meetings, but, the highlights and what came of this discussion, we can discuss with the commissioners who weren't present, apprise them of the projects, and then look to move to vote, if everyone is comfortable with that.
Any other questions, comments from the commissioners? Okay, I believe the meeting is adjourned.
Yeah, motion for adjournment?
I don't know if we can approve it anyway. So. Okay, very good. All right, thank you.